Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. Well, today's show is going to be talking not specifically about an ISO standard, but about ESOS. ESOS is the Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme. And you might think, well, why am I talking about this? What's it got to do with ISO standards? Well, there is an energy management standard, ISO 50001, which perfectly fits the bill to comply with ESOS. But I thought I'd do this podcast now because there is a deadline this year for large businesses to comply with the ESOS requirements. So I thought I'd just take you through very briefly what ESOS actually is, why we've got these in place and what's the requirement for the regulations, and also how to comply. So what is ESOS? So ESOS is the Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme, and it was launched by DEC, that's the Department of Energy and Climate Change in the UK, back in 2013. Now it's not optional, it is a mandatory scheme, and the whole point of it is to save energy and to save money, and ultimately to try and accrue energy savings of 1.6 billion. That's what DEC estimate, that if businesses are serious about reducing energy consumption, that's the amount that could potentially be saved. But it doesn't apply to every single business in the UK. Oh, by the way, it's European, so it's any business in the UK that fits this particular category, which is large enterprise. And you might think, well, what's a large enterprise? Well, it's an organisation that has more than 250 employees, or they have an annual turnover exceeding €50 million. Also, this is just applicable to private sector organisations. So the public sector, believe it or not, rightly or wrongly, is exempt. So what type of organisations do qualify then within the private sector? Well, that's limited companies, partnerships, and also not-for-profit bodies and trusts as well. Further information on that, in case you're wondering whether you do qualify or not, it's all available on the Environment Agency website, which is the UK's regulatory body for environmental management. But there are similar types of organisations if you're listening from overseas in Europe and you're interested in finding out what the qualifying criteria is in other countries. But it's very similar in terms of the size of the organisation and the turnover. So ESOS isn't new. It has been around, as I said, for a few years now, and we're in the second phase. So phase one, we were very busy at Blackmores helping organisations to comply by doing energy audits and complying with ISO 50001. So that was 4 years ago, and we're in phase two, as I said just now. So the deadline for phase two is the 5th of December 2019. So businesses, if they haven't done so already, really need to start collating their energy data and doing their energy reports now so that they don't miss the qualifying date. Because the consequence of not complying by that deadline could lead to fines. So why do these ESOS audits? Well, governments across Europe have identified that there are potentially significant cost savings to be made across all different types of industries. And in the UK alone, this could lead to £1.6 billion worth of benefits. And of course, it's all about helping the environment as well and reducing those CO2 emissions. So what do you have to do to comply with ESOS? Well, in simple terms, an ESOS assessment requires you to do 3 things. 1, measure your total energy consumption. 2, conduct energy audits to identify cost-effective energy efficiency recommendations. And thirdly, you've got to submit that report to the Environment Agency. So it's just those 3 things. Measure your total energy consumption, do an energy audit, and submit it by that deadline, which is the 5th of December 2019. So part of that criteria for the energy audit is to use 12 months of energy data consumption. And the whole point of this isn't just about looking at how much energy you're using, but looking at ways to save energy, to be more cost effective, to be more efficient in the way that you run your organisation. And the audit has to be overseen or conducted by an ESOS lead assessor. So you could carry out your own audits within your organisation once you've read through all the requirements on the Environment Agency's website, and an organisation like Blackmores, for example, could sign off that report. Or if you wanted to outsource it, that's something that we do and other consultants do as well. So what sort of things should you be looking for when you're doing these energy audits? Well, one of the first things you begin with is your building. You're looking at heating, ventilation, air conditioning, lighting. So with lighting, do you have sensors? Do you have LED lighting? Also looking at the fabric of the building. Do you have cavity wall insulation, roof insulation, high efficiency windows, glazing and draft proofing, for example? And also, do you have any controls for your building? So do you have any computer-based BMS, so that's a building management system, in place, so that you can control the temperature and other facilities for the building online? So you need to look at the way that you're using energy within the building. And you also need to look at processes as well. So looking at plant equipment. So obviously if in a manufacturing environment, you'd have lots of different equipment. So it's looking at whether you regularly maintain those systems, looking at the motors within systems. But it's not just restricted to manufacturing organisations. If you've got an office, you need to look at anything that uses energy. It could be printers, computers, microwave, kettles, etc. They all use energy, and believe it or not, they all need to be taken into consideration. Then you've got transportation. So do you have a fleet of vehicles and you use fuel? Okay, so what type of energy savings could you be making there? Looking at routing and scheduling, maintenance of vehicles, and driver fuel performance as well. And then also looking at employees. So you can have an awareness campaign, get employees engaged and sharing information, and ensuring you've got good communications on energy efficiencies, particularly if you've got targeted incentives in place. So let's look at routes to compliance. So there are basically two main areas. One is the ESOS energy audits. So that's where you go around the buildings and you take on board everything that I've just discussed and you record all of that. So that's one option. And the other option is ISO 50001. So 50001 is the Energy Management System standard. So this is a system that provides you with a framework for managing energy, not just for doing an audit and ticking a box, but demonstrating an ongoing commitment to reducing energy and to be as energy efficient as your company possibly can be today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. So it's all about continual improvement. And for those of you that already have an ISO management system, it's really easy to be able to integrate 50001 within that system. So what that basically means is that you don't necessarily have to do this once in a blue moon to tick the boxes for the Environment Agency. It's ongoing, and as soon as you say to the Environment Agency you've got 50001, and you don't have to do those separate ESOS audits and assessments, etc. You just need to submit to the Environment Agency the scope that you're covered for certification. But I must say that your scope must cover all of your business operations in order to be able to qualify for ESOS compliance. There are a couple of other routes, but they're not all encompassing, like the Green Deal assessments. That's only going to be covering buildings, for example. It's not going to be covering everything else that we mentioned. And also DEC certificates. Again, that's just restricted to building energy use as well. And of course, the Environment Agency are looking for more than just that. So hopefully that's provided you with a bit of an insight into what ESOS is, why ESOS is so important, and the main routes to ESOS compliance. In the next episode, I'm going to be going through in detail how to complete those ESOS energy audits, and also